let's talk about changing guitar strings. Ooh, so many questions. How often should I change them? What kind of strings should I use? What brand strings should I use? Should I put steel strings on a classical guitar? Can I put classical strings on a steel string guitar? Should I get heavy tension? Should I get light tension? Should I get medium tension? Ooh, so many good questions. I'm so glad you asked. Well, let's start at the beginning. How often or when should I change my strings? Well, I've met people who change their strings every couple of days, and I have met people who have left the same set of strings on their guitar for 30 years. Somewhere in between those two extremes is a good frequency to change your strings. Generally, you can tell your strings need changing on a steel string guitar because they start to get discolored and they're not shiny anymore. You can see where my hands are. Other reasons to change your strings is you have a recording session coming up, you have an important gig coming up or a recital, and you want to sound your best. The reason that I can't give you an exact number of how many weeks or months you can leave your strings on is there are a lot of variables. 1, how acidic are your fingers? 2, how often do you play the guitar? 3, do you have regular strings or do you have strings such as elixirs that are coated with a thin web of plastic to make the strings last a lot longer? So with all those variables, I can't give you an exact how often to change your strings. You kind of have to go by, do they start to look discolored? Do they sort of go thud instead of ring when you play them? Most people, every few months, every 6 months, certainly every year, but I try to change mine about every 6 weeks, and if I have elixirs on, I can get away with a matter of 3 or 4 months, and they still sound good even though I play the guitar every day. Sorry for that inexact answer, but there's just too many variables to give you an exact answer. It will not hurt the guitar if you leave on strings for a very long time, as long as the guitar is left in a place that's decent humidity and decent temperature. Guitars like to be in the same condition that we do, somewhere between 60 and 75 degrees and about 50 to 70% humidity. They don't like to be too humid. They certainly don't like to be too dry. They don't like to be too cold, and they really don't like to be too hot. Stick a guitar in an attic. That's a good way to ruin it. But that's not today's topic. Today's topic is changing the strings. Now, the easiest way to change the strings is to just go to a store, pay 20 or 30 bucks, and wait a couple of days or even a couple of weeks, depending on how disorganized they are, and have someone else change the strings. But let's say you live in Antarctica, or maybe you don't want to pay 20 or 30 bucks. Maybe you can't pay 20 or 30 bucks. That's why we're here today, to talk about how to change your strings. Well, what are you going to need in order to change your strings? Just a few things. A guitar, a new set of strings, which I've already taken out of the package. A string winder would be helpful, also called a silent noisemaker. You can get a string winder anywhere from like $1 or $2 to $10, depending on how upscale of a string winder you get. And some wire cutters. You can also get, this particular one is a combination string winder on one end and wire cutter on the other. Sort of a multi-tool. So that's what I'll be using today. Most important safety tip, never, ever, 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 ever cut your strings before you loosen them. Oh, you really can put an eye out. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is remove a string. We're only going to remove one string at a time. We'll get the string winder. So step 1, after you get everything you need and you have your strings, most important, don't want to get rid of those old strings until you have a set of new strings to put on there. we're going to take off one string. So first we'll start with the 6th string. The 6th string, that's this one, right? 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1 is the one closest to the 4. So I'm going to start with the 6th string. You can start with any string, but if you're going to do it with me, then start with the 6th string. And we're going to put the string winder on here to loosen it. And let's make sure, we'll play it as we loosen it to make sure that we're turning it the right way. Should be getting lower, right? If we're getting this sound where it's going, you're turning it the wrong direction. If it's getting higher in its pitch, we don't want to do that. You can break a string that way. So we want to go down, and we'll loosen, 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 loosen. Now it's just rubber band sounding. Now that it's at that point, you can either just slip it off, or you can cut it with your wire cutters. Once you've cut the string though, it really can't be used again. There's no putting it back together. So you may want to, just for safety, just pull it off and don't cut it. Then we'll remove the end. There's one end. And keep track of those, because if you step on them, or if you have pets or kids, they can get hurt by the sharp ends of the guitar strings. Now, we have to take this other end out. And that's where we need, this part of the string winder has a notch in it. And that's made for pulling out the end pin. That's what this is called. So we're just going to the 6th string. Never pull out the end pin until you've completely loosened the string. Now, as you can see, I'm having a hard time getting this out. So, that's good because I can show you my trick for when this doesn't work, when you can't get up under there and remove the end pin. There is a trick for that. But I'm going to wait until I've removed some more strings because I have to stick my hand in the sound hole. And I'm not a big fan of causing myself physical pain. So I'm going to wait until there's a little more room to get my hand in there. So let's loosen another string. Number 5. We're not going to take off all 6, and there's a reason for this. So make sure, again, put this string winder on number 5. You can follow the string up, make sure that you're at the right peg, and then play it. That's what we're after there, nice and floppy. We'll just unwind it a whole lot. And this one I won't cut. I'll just loosen it so much that I can just remove it manually. In case you don't have a wire cutter. All right, and then we just unwind it and pull it through. Okay, now, again, I'm going to try, on this case, the 5th string, to get in there and take out the end pin, and that worked. I got up under there with that notchy part, got up under the end pin, pulled it out. All right, let's keep that. I'm going to put that on the music stand. Those things will roll away, so you got to keep good track of them. And now I'm going to wind up my string and wind it around itself a few times so that I can throw it away and it won't be sticking out of the trash can. String number 5. Bye-bye. Now, let's get number 6. That end pin is stuck, which is perfect because I want to help you with it. So, get some kind of hard surface. I'm going to use, this is the end of a screwdriver, a little bitty screwdriver, but you could also use a quarter. That's what I usually use, is a quarter. And I'll get up in there and make sure I'm pushing on the correct end pin, not 4, 3, 2, or 1, because those still have strings attached. And if I pop those out with a tight string on there, it's going to pop up and hit me in the face. That's going to be ugly. So make sure, you may even want to put safety goggles on, as Bill Nye the Science Guy would say. So make sure you're pushing on number 6 from underneath. Okay, here's me winding up the remnant of number 6. Now, at this point, you could take the opportunity to polish your guitar, get some of that dust off of it, put on a little guitar polish and shine it up a bit. I'm not going to do that today. I'm actually going to start putting strings back on, the new strings. Because when you're new at putting strings on your guitar, sometimes you get confused about which way to wind the strings around the peg. And then you can put it on backwards, and then in order to tune it, you have to do one string in one direction, another string in another direction. So I like to leave some strings on when I'm showing someone how to change strings. So I've got a pack of D'Addario light. I suggest light gauge strings for most players. You would think medium, like usually most people wear a medium shirt or whatever. You want to go get a coffee, you order a medium. Well, you don't want medium guitar strings. Medium are actually very hard to play. So I suggest light. They even make extra light. They should really rename them. They should make them light, and then make the lights medium, make the mediums hard, and then have extra hard. But they didn't consult me when they made these things up. The 6th string says E6 brass. That's the color of the end of the string. That way if you take them all out of the package and get them all mixed up and you don't know which one goes where, you can look at the package and go, okay, the 6th one is brass colored, has a brass colored end. What does that mean? Let me show you. See, that one is red. That's not what I'm after. And that is this one. It's colored the same as the strings. So now I'm going to put the 6th string back, a new 6th string on. And we start by putting this end with the ball end, into the 6th string, into the hole there where the 6th string goes. Put the end pin in. Now here's the trick with the end pin. You do not want the string to end up like this, with the ball end underneath the bottom of the end pin. That's no good. The way we want it to end up is like this. So we'll put it in there, and then we put the end pin in, and then we keep pulling up on it until we make sure that the ball is not up underneath the bottom. And we can go in there and feel it and go, okay, it's not underneath it. It's up alongside of the end pin like it should be. And then we bring it, make sure we put it in the right peg here. And we want to leave about that much room, that much tension. Don't want to leave too much, or they'll be winding forever, and you don't want to leave too little because then it doesn't leave any room to tune it. Okay, now you'll see on the guitar, I want to then wrap the extra string around underneath and then back the other way. Just bend it, kind of crimping it, sort of folding it, and then we start to tighten it. Now, for the 6th string, we should be turning it towards the far wall. That way is up. All right, that's really important. We don't want the guitar strings turned in the wrong direction. And make sure it doesn't just flat, like it just tried to flop back over. We don't want that. So guide it. That's why I'm keeping my finger here on the nut so that the string stays in place. Right, mash that string down until it's good and secure on that tuning peg. So I don't really use the string winder to tighten it. I use it only to loosen it. Okay, still kind of rattly. I want to leave it rattly. I don't want to over tighten it. We'll leave it a little bit rattly. And now we use the string cutter, which in this case is part of the tool. It's part of the string winder, but you can also have one that's just its own thing. I'm going to cut off this extra amount of string. And then I like to mash it down so that that pointy thing doesn't jab me. So I'll use the tools because you can draw blood. You really can. So I will mash that down so that it doesn't hurt my fingers, because it's kind of hard to play guitar after you just poked holes in your fingers. And there we have one string changed. And then you will repeat the process. But the reason that I leave the strings on, the old strings on, is I want to check and make sure, okay, this one winds that way. Does it match this one? Yes, it does. They both wind that way. If one of them was over and the other was under, then they're not going to match anymore, and you have to tune one in one direction and the other in the other direction. It's all backward. You don't want that. So that's how you change strings. I think we've come up against every obstacle. We had a stuck end pin, and we had strings that weren't in individual packages to tell you which string goes where.